We'll go ahead and call tonight's Planning Commission meeting to order and look for a approval of the minutes and agenda.
Making a motion to approve them.
Do we have any amendments or any changes?
I don't.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we will go right into our old business. Do I need to say anything about the VanDoren Rezone?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. That Schroeder Township had a meeting last Tuesday that I attended virtually, and they're going to begin their Schroeder Town Plan update in January. They did a call out for township committee members, essentially, members of the community that want to participate. And so they had some interest from citizens, and I expressed willingness and interest to be a part of that process too, so that I can help however way I may. And so we'll begin that meeting in January, and I can give you updates as we go along. But the VanDoren Rezone request subsequently withdrew their rezone application, and we told them that they could reapply for the rezone after that township plan update has taken effect, and that we would waive the application fee. So essentially, okay, the town plan's updated. Let's see how this request matches up with that plan update in the future. So that is completed for now.
Thank you. Second old business item, Peter Grubish, Bull LLC, request to consider preliminary plat to subdivide one parcel into 16 residential lots, Temperance Trails development, file number 2024-2P. Neva?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is being brought back before you. This is a revised request. Back in August, you reviewed a version of this preliminary plat that was phased out. So originally it was a phase 1, phase 2 proposal. Since then, the plan has now been modified to be the proposed full build out of the plat. That's one of the biggest differences than what you may have seen or remembered from August. So before you now is the preliminary plat to subdivide into 16, and this would be, again, the full build out of it. As a reminder, the property is a little over 29 acres, zoned single-family residential where the lot development is proposed, and general commercial over by the highway. These planned unit developments are conditional use in the zone district, and the conditional use permit was issued about this time in 2023. And this property is within the North Shore Management Zone. On the screen is the revised preliminary plat map. The property, again, is located behind Birch Grove Community School and is generally used for an outdoor education space at the play area. The preliminary plat has set aside the recreational space as a common element between units 104 and 105. North of this project site is FAR1 zone land, which is the 20-acre minimum lot size area. East and west of the project site is the single-family residential zone district, and immediately south of the project site is general commercial. And land south of Highway 61 is resort commercial and R1. I put in the conditions of approval for the conditional use permit that was issued. Again, the conditional use permit was allowing up to 22 residential units. The conditions attached to that were that the drinking water supply meets state code requirements. There was a full septic design plan with other stipulations with septic requirements. The preliminary plat was to identify areas for stormwater management. A large site stormwater permit would be required prior to beginning grade fill activities on site. All state and federal permits would be secured, including stormwater permits with PCA or Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the Community Public Water Supply Plan approval with Minnesota Department of Health and potentially Department of Labor and Industry, and that the road and cul-de-sac would remain as a double-lane travel corridor. On the screen is the zoning map for the locality with the proposed project site just above that red area on the screen. I also included the map, just to remind you of what the original conditional use permit looks like. So the road shape is in spirit still about the same configuration with that dead-end road. We now don't have the cul-de-sac, it's a hammerhead, and it's located in a little bit of a different location with a different setup of the residential units. Let's see, for site conditions and considerations, for wetlands, the application has shifted the road south to minimize wetland impacts to comply with the State Wetland Conservation Act. The road development will still require a wetland replacement plan, and that would be through the purchase of wetland credits. For septic, Mitch Everson, the Cook County Environmental Health Specialist, has provided a memo indicating that environmental health will need to work with a septic design in the spring when the review of soils is feasible. This is to say that a full septic design has not yet been reviewed for the site, and that can't really happen until the springtime when the soils can be verified. For the road, the platted road is shown as 66 feet wide, and the plat shows a 30-foot setback from the road right-of-way. The plat map shows a hammerhead turnaround that's 20 feet deep and 110 feet wide. Staff have reached out to the Cook County Sheriff's Department, Highway Engineer, and Tofty Township to see if this would be an adequate size for emergency services. The feedback I received from those entities is they did not think it would be a big issue. The Tofty Township supervisor indicated he wouldn't think it would be a problem for the township, and Sheriff Eliason also indicated that he didn't think that this would be a problem. For stormwater, the preliminary plat shows stormwater ponds on the east and west side of the development. The size of the rain event the stormwater pond is designed for is unclear. The Cook County Highway Engineer has indicated that these ponds should be designed for a 10-year, 24-hour rain event minimum per Minnesota state requirements, which would be approximately 3.55-inch rainfall. For the survey review, now would be an appropriate time to acknowledge that the Cook County surveyor, Wayne Henschey, did recently pass away, so he was unable to do a review of this plat. When I reached out to other surveyors, to Mr. Henschey's legacy and credit, many expressed strong enthusiasm to assist us in any way that they could, being he was such an important role in that community. So I did get assistance from St. Louis County to review this plat, and they indicated to me that the type of plat that this is subject to Minnesota State Statute 515. The part of the information I received, so I'm not going to have this in the staff narrative itself because I didn't have this information when I wrote the staff narrative. So I made a slide for it. There we go. You don't have to read that. I will read it to you. So this is the information from the St. Louis County Surveyor's Office. They completed a meeting with the St. Louis County Auditor's Office regarding this preliminary plat submittal for the CIC 43 in Cook County. The biggest concern that they saw is that the declaration is incomplete. The title on the declaration doesn't agree with the title shown on the map portion of the plat, and the declaration states CIC number 17, whereas the map says CIC number 43. The CIC also indicates there's 15, or a total of 10 units where the plat map is showing a different number, and the legal description on the property isn't accurate in the declaration. That was the biggest concern that they saw. They felt that the declarations needed a significant amount of cleaning up, so to say, before it was submitted for final plat. And the emphasis with these types of developments and this type of a plat is that the declarations document is really the meat and potatoes, so to say, that ties everything together. So it is really important that that gets accurate before this project goes to final plat. I think there's a way to condition this that requires improvements to the declaration to be reviewed by an attorney, and then the county attorney or one of our representative attorneys can also review it before it goes to final plat to remedy those issues. There also was it's worth noting, there was a little question about the drainage and utility easements. So the plat map shows drainage and utility easements, and this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but I do believe we'll want to further talk about that with the applicants as to whether or not that's allowed on a CIC plat. This is not a subject matter that I typically work with, but the St. Louis County Surveyor's Office told me that drainage and utility easements cannot be on CIC plats. I don't think that's substantial to this, but I want that kind of shown in the record that that needs to be addressed before the final plat is approved, to make sure that that's conforming to state statutes. For the design standards, relative to our Cook County subdivision ordinance, this project does meet the requirements of the open space preservation. What I did highlight in my staff report is that there was areas on the plat map that indicated was open space but isn't allowed to be open space. So that would be the septic treatment and the stormwater infrastructure. Even if those were taken out of that calculation, this does still meet the 50% open space requirement. So just to note that detail there. For public noticing, I did re-notice this plat request because the design had changed so significantly from the original public noticing. So this began all the public noticing process again. So this was on the Cook County News Herald public notices on November 29th. 57 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners, as well as county departments, the town of Tofty, North Shore Management Board, and DNR hydrologist. We received 3 letters of support from members of the community, which included Rob Dieter, who was in support to expand housing on the West End, Dennis Risdall, personally on behalf of American and Tofty, a letter of support indicating a desire to see the development restricted to owner occupancy only and not allow nightly rental use, and Mary Somnus provided a letter of support to add housing in Tofty. Additionally, for technical memos, as I mentioned before, Mitch Everson provided his review. Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District provided a detailed memo indicating guidance for stormwater practices in the difficult terrain, and also that they could hopefully help secure grants to implement climate resilient stormwater infrastructure. Holly Schroeder, the Cook County Recorder, indicated that the plat has not been updated to include the signature line for the Planning Commission chairperson, the county attorney, and the county board chairperson, which was mentioned in the County Recorder's August 28th memo originally. And additionally, I reached out to Craig Horak, the Tofty Township Supervisor, and he indicated the township's priority was that the homes be deed restricted to no short-term rentals, and that the Cook County Sheriff, Pat Eliason, indicated no concerns with the proposed Hammerhead turnarounds. For staff recommendations for consideration, the preliminary plat proposes to add 16 residential units in Tofty, a use which is highly desired throughout the community and township. This application has significantly increased its accuracy since August submittal and is now proposing the full plat instead of the original phased approach. The residential density has a lower density than the original conditional use permit allowed, and smaller lots and unit sizes than originally proposed. Neither of these items are viewed as problematic to staff, so long as the plat can maintain the 50% open space preservation. The Planning Commission must decide whether to recommend approval or denial of this application at the December 18th meeting. Tabling the application is unlikely to be productive, as the project proposer has an agreement with the Cook County HRA that requires a permitting decision by the end of 2024. Staff believes that additional corrections and technical information can be addressed after approval of the preliminary plat, and it encourages the Planning Commission to consider setting conditions of approval to address any and all concerns they may have to be addressed before final plat. If additional information to be gained significantly alters the project, an amendment to the plat, or amendment to the preliminary plat is an option to address those issues in the future. I put together some conditions that I thought could give us some beginning talking points, and I'll try to summarize through them, and we can discuss further from there. So number 1, maximum density is limited to 16 residential units total, with 1 dwelling per a lot/unit. Structure setback shall be 10 feet from interior and exterior lot lines, with exception on lots with duplexes connected to the abutting lot, and a 30-foot from the platted road right-of-way. Each lot is permitted 1 accessory structure to be used as a garage and/or storage. The maximum accessory structure area is 900 square feet or 20 feet in height, or other size per the Planning Commission's discretion. The CIC plat and declarations must be in accordance with Minnesota Statute 515. The open space preservation must be in accordance with the Cook County subdivision ordinance and not include the septic treatment or stormwater infrastructure. Stormwater design should be updated to meet MPCA requirements. All other state stormwater regulations and Cook County stormwater ordinance regulations shall be met. The project proposer is encouraged to work with the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District to explore assistance with implementing climate-resilient stormwater infrastructure. The project conforms to the State Wetland Conservation Act boundaries, which shall be monumented in the form acceptable to the county's wetland specialist and/or planning and zoning administrator. All residential lots and units shall conform to the state wetland regulations. A licensed septic designer coordinates with Cook County Environmental Health to complete the soils verification and septic design, and I included a lot of details to what would be expected in that. Number 9, the homeowners association is established with the following features, and those are 4 features outlined in our subdivision ordinance. Number 10, the water may be provided by individual on-site wells or by one or more community wells in open spaces. Number 11, the developer and county shall enter into a developer's agreement acceptable to the county for all subdivisions prior to the granting of final approval of the development. And number 12, approval of the preliminary plat does not constitute an acceptance of the subdivision, but is deemed to be an authorization to proceed to final plat. And the rest of that language, that's all from our subdivision ordinance. This is just pulling out certain sections of our subdivision ordinance for clarification purposes. I did receive some more information about stormwater design elements, so when we get into that discussion, we can talk about some of the thoughts about maybe setting more clear conditions about the stormwater infrastructure as well. One of the things is that the separation distance is supposed to be 35 feet from a water supply well to the ordinary high water level of a stormwater retention pond. So we just want to maybe think through if that's going to be an issue on that east end. Again, it's not your job to set a condition on every state or local regulation. You know, those are always in place anyway. But it's helpful at this point to think about those things and put them as conditions where it seems reasonable, so that both the applicant and staff and the planning commission can kind of check those boxes when if this project does go to final plat. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Neva. At this point, I'd like to ask the applicant if they want to add anything to staff's narrative.
Honestly, you have the treasure in having Neva as your preliminary plat. I've never worked with somebody more thorough than her. But we definitely appreciate working with her. Overall, we understand that there's a few things that still need to be addressed, but as a whole, I feel what we've got presented to you is pretty accurate to our intents and moving forward. I do know that
If we're gonna-
it hasn't been put on there, but most
Excuse-
stormwater ponds have been 25-year rating.
25-year, okay. If we ask you for more questions, we'll have you come up and state your name and address, but that was,
Okay.
thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to speak for or against this application? Please come up and state your name and address.
Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Bill Gabler. I live at 68 Big Cedar Trail in Lutzen. I'm the District 5 representative to the Cook County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I'm currently serving as board chair. We've been working with this developer for a long time, and with the town of Tofty, who did a really good deed in terms of providing the land. We have committed some funding to this because we really think this is an important effort to provide some for sale housing in the West End. There is a restriction against short-term rental because of the support we've provided. We think that's important, and we're excited about it, and we support it. And I can't comment on all the technical aspects of the review that you need to do, but just as an overall purpose of housing in Cook County, this is one of our developments, and we're proud of it, and we're happy that you're considering it, and we'd appreciate your support as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Chris O'Brien. I live at 97 Old Ski Hill Road, and I'm also a District 4 Commissioner for the HRA and currently serving as the Vice Chair of the HRA. Certainly would echo what my colleague, Commissioner Gabler, has said. And I'd like to highlight another point, which is that, we've seen a lot of success with the HRA in the last couple of years in terms of getting traction with multifamily, particularly with multifamily projects. That's important, but that's not enough to meet the housing needs of the whole county. This Tofty project really represents something quite different and potentially a model for addressing the specific housing needs in other parts of the county that are outside the Grand Marais. Grand Marais has been, the city of Grand Marais projects have been lower hanging fruit because of the available tie-in to municipal services. This is going one step further, and we see it as a potential model for other housing developments that could be developed in other parts of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this application? We're going to close to the public and discuss as commissioners.
One observation I have is, I read the HOA agreement. Who's going to have jurisdiction on that in the final format? Because of major concerns with how it's drafted at the moment. Do we?
Would
Peter Grubish, the developer. That is a preliminary draft. Once we get through preliminary plat, we're going to have an attorney review everything and draft it, but the main focus is that the community that's within this development will have its own elected officials that will vote within the agreement of their HOA. So the people that are a part of the HOA will be able to vote. Each household will have their own vote. So not one person can vote against the other as far as like being pushed out.
Right, but the concerns I have is just some of the things that are being proposed right now are, right to enter people's homes, right to foreclose and take someone's home away from them belonging to the HOA committee, the right to, or the authority to take a lawyer and assign them to pursue collections and so forth, and the person who's being collected against ends up responsible for the lawyer's fees, but has no control over what the lawyer does and what those fees accrue. So there's a lot of things that are just.
And from that standpoint, it's all preliminary. I don't disagree that some of that doesn't need to be adjusted. And that's definitely something that as the development, they can make final decision on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jason Hale, Cook County HRA, 425 West Highway 61, Suite B, Grand Marais. So the HRA actually also has final approval authority of that document. We haven't approved the draft yet. This is the first step, is we have to have the ability for the developer to proceed with the desired development before we go to the next step, which is prior to closing, we have to get that final draft document.
Okay.
We have our attorney who can look at it and review it, make sure everything is up and up, so to speak.
Right.
But I've looked at the draft. I have my own questions about it as well. But there wasn't. We don't want to spend our attorney time or our time doing too much of that until we know we can proceed.
I'm making sure it's part of the record.
Yep. Understood.
Okay.
Sure. I have a question for Neva, I guess. On staff recommendation, number 12. So this is a preliminary approval. So we get another bite at this, so to speak. The developer has, until we do the final approval, the ability to correct all of the discrepancies or changes that we deem should be done. So this really isn't the final. We still have a year, that they have a year in which to correct all of these issues and bring us a set of plans that all agree with each other and meet the requirements.
Right, and I think I would need to double check our subdivision ordinance, but I seem to recall our subdivision ordinance doesn't require a public hearing for the final plat. So it still comes to you for review. And again, I want to double check that ordinance language. And I can do that pretty easily while we're discussing some other things. And I can come back to you with a clarification about that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mike or Paul, do you have any comments?
Well, I mean, I think the sentiment is, it's there. It's pretty clear that we want this as a community, so there's some Ts to cross and Is to dot. I would agree. We have a very thorough array of those things to do. I don't have any specific things to recommend, but I think there's work to be done, and we all know that.
Okay. Well,
I guess I tend to agree with, I would say my concerns are addressed in staff's recommended conditions. I guess, any more discussion? Otherwise, I would call for a vote.
I make a motion to approve it with the stipulations on
The-
the 12.
12 conditions
Yeah,
recommended.
conditions.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Approved.
So this will
Thank you.
go to the County Board of Commissioners at the first meeting in January for action items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look for a motion to adjourn the planning commission?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Just wait
All in
for me to
favor?
do it.
Aye.
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 Sorry I didn't have that answer at the top of my head, Jeff.
Pardon?
I can follow up with you tomorrow.
Sorry, I got a
with
little quick.
Answer, more clear answer about that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hi,
Yep.
Tom.
You're at 5.
How's it going? I saw you chuckle. I get it. I'm glad you're able to come tonight. Oh. Yeah, what was the? Oh, really? Oh, I'd be curious to talk more about that.
We're going to go ahead and call the Board of Adjustment meeting to order. Hey, Jason, can you guys have your discussion outside?
Yeah. See ya. Rabble rouser.
Look for a approval of the agenda and minutes from last month's meeting and this agenda.
I move to approve the agenda and the minutes as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. New business. John and Mary Worley request a variance. Reference number 2024-18V. Neva?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a variance relief from the Cook County zoning ordinance. Let me just get my screen caught up. Section 7.14, to place a 30 by 40 foot portion of the principal structure within the bluff impact zone on Lot 9 of the legendary Lutsen Sawmill Bay site plat. The applicant's property includes 1.65 acres with approximately 242 feet of Caribou Lake shoreline. The parcel is contained entirely within the Lakeshore Residential Zone District. Zoning lot size requirements for new lots in that zone district must be 1 acre in size and 150 feet wide at the shoreline structure setback, and Caribou Lake is classified as a recreational development lake. For project description, John and Mary Worley, the applicants, are requesting to place the primary dwelling on Lot 9. The variance requests to place a portion of the structure within the bluff impact zone, and the structure would meet the lake shoreline setback and property line setbacks of the proposed location. For background, because this does get a little bit in the weeds on definitions, I'm going to go through some definitions that will be pertinent to help clarify. So the section of ordinance that specifically requires a variance relief, section 7.14, prohibits or says no structures shall be allowed in the bluff impact zone. The page 12 of 40 of the variance packets is where the illustration of what a bluff impact zone is located. So to better understand the variance request, we'll talk through this. First off, the bluff definition is 4 different criteria of a slope in order for it to be a bluff. And that would be that part or all of the features within shoreland area, the slope rises at least 25 feet above the ordinary high water level of the water body, the grade of the slope from the toe of the bluff to a point 25 feet or more above the ordinary high water level averages 30% or greater, and the slope must drain towards the water body. And then it states an area with an average slope of less than 18% over a distance of 50 feet or more shall not be considered part of a bluff. Also, the bluff impact zone then is the area of what we think of the bluff. So the feature that meets that definition that I just described of the 4 characteristics, that is in the bluff impact zone. And then it's the top 20 feet after the top of bluff. So that is what makes a bluff impact zone. This variance request is proposing the structure to be kind of in the middle of the bluff slope. So going midway up the hill is where this feature is going to be. Traditionally, when this board is looking at bluff setbacks, we're usually at the top of the bluff. So that's the distinction I'm trying to set clear. Additionally, so looking at the screen here, what I have on here is from page 13 of 40. And this is the staff's determination of how we interpret the face of this slope on this lot. So the green area is the area that we determine does not meet all of those bluff definition criteria because it is less than 30% in slope. And the red area is what our staff determined is exceeding the 30% grade and slope. So it's more steep in the red area and less steep in the green area. When our staff was on site, it's a little tricky because it goes from a more gradual slope to a more steep slope as you're walking parallel to the shoreline. And that is where ultimately when you're on site doing determinations, you kind of have to draw a line in the sand. And looking at the data available to us on the computer and on site, this is what our staff determined. So we don't have a top of bluff setback, but a portion of the structure is proposed to be in the green area and a smaller portion of the structure is proposed to be in the red area. This was my interpretation. I tried to take the applicant's diagram of the application and overlay it with the color slope photo we just looked at. So again, for reference, you'll see the garage and the main portion of the house is in the green area. So that's just a steep slope in that location. It does not require a variance, just we would want to talk about stormwater drainage at the staff level when issuing permits. And then in the red area, it's in the bluff impact zone, so we administratively can't issue permits in that area, and that's what the variance is needed for. All right, here is a photo of the plat. So this is lot 9, and I have a photo kind of illustrating some of the vegetation. In the specific build site, it's a lot of spruce and balsam, not very high quality trees. Further down slope, there are some really nice cedars. I think in here, that's the view of the lake. So some forestry management on site will probably be needed as a part of the development. We did receive some public comments from the Caribou Lake Property Owners Association, as well as the Soil and Water Conservation District and the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And those were in response to the public notices we mailed out. There was 33 letters sent out to adjacent property owners, county departments, Lutsen Township, the Cook County Coalition of Lakes Association, and the DNR hydrologist. In those comment letters, the Caribou Lake Property Owners Association, part of their quote included, if the Cook County Zoning and Planning Commission determines that indeed there would be excessive excavation, increasing the risk of erosion and runoff if the structure were moved back on the lot, the CLPOA has no objection to the variance request. However, if the commission determines that the amount of additional excavation is negligible and does not pose a risk to increased erosion and runoff, even though it would be a more expensive building site. CLPOA opposes the variance request. The comment letter also provides concern regarding water runoff and erosion with recommendations for gutters and drainage practices and a stormwater plan. The Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District provided a technical memo recommending stormwater best management practices be implemented during construction and after construction to mitigate the impact of development on Caribou Lake. The memo also provides several excellent resources for implementing best management practices. And the Department of Natural Resources area hydrologist provided their memo determining that this application was not controversial or problematic. The DNR provided recommendations for conditions of approval to mitigate the impact of development, which has been integrated into the proposed conditions of this report. For, let's see, I kind of skipped over the history, but it's a part of the legendary Lutzen Sawmill plat sites, which was created in 1985. The Bluff Impact Zone Protection Standards were implemented in the state shoreline rules in 1989. So this is just to say that this lot was created prior to Bluff definitions being created. The applicants indicate that this is their preferred route to access the building site from the easement that's just south of the site, which is a less steep slope to build a driveway. For septic, the application indicates the new septic site will be installed to serve the property further up from the lake, up the hill by Sawmill Lane. For impervious surface coverage, the proposed development will not exceed the 25% impervious surface coverage. Stormwater management best practices can be utilized to mitigate the impacts of runoff. The zoning and stormwater county ordinances have strict requirements for administrative oversight when development is along steep bluffs and slopes. For wetlands, wetlands are not an issue driving the need for the variance. Wetlands are present within the shoreline setback area near the lake shore, not in this building site. I gave my version of some consideration for proposed facts and findings. I provided some notations of where the land use guide plan indicates a priority for protecting natural resources, as well as balancing the needs, general public good with the corresponding rights and responsibilities of individuals. Additionally, I noted that traditionally requests to encroach within the bluff impact zone are located towards the top of the bluff feature, as I mentioned earlier. The specific area where the addition is proposed to be placed is approximately a 20% slope and only qualifies as being within the bluff impact area because the slope is steeper above and below the specific build site. For the variance finding, the proposed use of the property is allowed in the land use district in which the property is located. The finding is the parcel is zoned lakeshore residential. Residential uses are allowed on this platted lot. For variance finding, the property owner is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the county zoning ordinance. The proposed staff finding is that the property owner does propose to use the property in a reasonable manner, given the build site is relatively flatter and will result in less excavation than other locations on the lot. The specific build location is less than 30% slope and is only within the bluff impact zone due to the slopes above and below the build site. The proposed build site is meeting all other property line and shoreline setbacks. For variance finding, the property owner has established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Staff's draft finding is, again, traditionally requests to encroach within the bluff impact zone are located towards the top of the bluff feature. The specific area where the addition is proposed to be placed is approximately 20% slope and only qualifies as being within the bluff impact area because of the slope is steeper above and below the specific build site. This is a unique circumstance not often seen on properties due to the changing slope phase. The application suggests 70% of the parcel is determined to be within the bluff zone or shoreline setback, resulting in a narrow corridor, approximately 50 feet, to allow conforming development near the shoreline setback. Staff's analysis delineates the area of the slope that meets the bluff criteria does cover a significant portion of the lot. Additionally, this legal lot of record was created prior to the bluff regulations being included in state shoreline regulations. Most of this lot is either a steep slope or a bluff. Cook County zoning and stormwater ordinances both call out higher requirements for administrative permitting on these features, enabling staff to be more involved to ensure the lot is developed in a way that mitigates negative impacts. For a variance finding, approving the variance maintains the essential character of the locality. Draft findings are the area is zoned lakeshore residential, consisting of platted lots. The subject parcel is located at the end of a dead-end platted road. Shoreline is facing the back bay of Caribou Lake. The lot is currently forested, however, trees will need to be removed for both construction and wildfire prevention. Many of the existing trees on site are either dead, dying, balsam, and spruce. The structure being placed meeting the 100-foot setback and not being placed at the top of the bluff. This suggests that the essential character of the locality is unlikely to be disturbed beyond normal development, especially with functional stormwater best management practices being implemented. Being placed in the middle of the hillside should make the structure stand out less than if it was placed at the top of the bluff. And the variance finding the property owner has established the practical difficulty involves more than economic considerations alone. Staff did not find that economic considerations were the reason for the variance request. For staff recommendations for consideration, staff do not view this request as problematic. Given the topography of the lot being largely a steep bluff or steep slope or bluff, the selected build site provides a suitable location for development. However, given the topography of the site, it is highly important the stormwater best management practices are taken during construction and after construction to strategically manage the water flow down the hill towards the lake. Given the condition of existing forest cover, staff recommends the applicants reach out to Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District to inquire about managing the vegetation along the bluff impact zone. Management will likely include new plantings of different tree varieties and the removal of dead and dying trees. The ordinances restrict vegetation removal along the bluff impact zone. However, when in conjunction with a plan with Soil and Water Conservation District, this can be a healthy land use practice. If approved, the following conditions may be attached to this variance request. Number one, the property shall conform to Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County septic requirements. Number two, the shoreline shall remain unmowed with natural vegetation consisting of forbs, grasses, shrubs, and trees, and that is at least 25 feet in width landward from the lake. Number three, a gutter or catchment system shall be included on the structure to divert precipitation runoff away from the bluff. Number four, vegetation removal on the lot shall adhere to the Cook County zoning ordinance, shoreline alteration standards. And number five, an erosion and sediment control plan or stormwater management plan is required in accordance with section 7.13 of the Cook County stormwater ordinance. And I provided that language in the staff narrative. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Neva. Would the applicant like to add anything to Neva's narrative? And if so, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Mary Worley. Thank you for taking the time to look at our variance. My husband wasn't able to make it tonight.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you please state your address?
Oh, sure. It's 4832 Harriet Avenue in Minneapolis.
Thank you.
My husband wasn't able to make it tonight, but thank you for considering our variance. We appreciate it. I just wanted to give you some historical background on our decision to purchase this property. We met last February with Joseph Routh, who was a county employee at that time, and discussed with him the lot, and he shared with us the two areas that were buildable on the lot. And you can see those in the maps, the green areas that Neva showed us. And we made our decision to purchase the lot based on that information, that it was buildable in those two areas with a view of the lake. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for a wooded lot that was on Caribou Lake. And so that was the decision that we made, was based on that information, that we'd be able to build in that area. And we hope that that with your help, we'll be able to do that, to build a house that has some, where we can view the lake from the house.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on this application? That leaves you, Tom.
Tom Dwyer. I'm a contractor and assisting the Worleys with their project at this point. And the only thing, 4921 West Highway 61 in Lutz is my office. The only thing I wanted to add, and it's been a hard thing to wrestle around, and Charlie Traval went out and helped us from North Shore Land Surveying with getting this. And the positioning of that line from the top of the bluff and the 30-foot setback, that next segment, that rule was, is it 18% over 50 feet?
Mm-hmm.
And the last 10 feet of it, the upper part of that, just shot up and threw the whole thing well over 20. But in the area that we're trying to build in, we believe we're at about 15 to 16% in the build area that we're going to disturb and hope to disturb and function with. It's so hard to convey that in that map, but I don't know if you've been on the site, but and then I'll answer any other questions that come up.
Thank you.
When you were walking the site and stuff, did you see rock outcroppings or get a sense of what's under that soil?
There is some rock outcroppings, not a lot right there. We expect to be able to dig based on neighboring properties.
Okay.
We built the 2 houses to the south of it. One of them
Okay.
was mine.
All right.
And we were able to dig 15 to 20 feet before we hit bedrock that direction. And then to the north, I think there's some rock outcroppings as you get to the north side of the lot and onto the neighboring lot to the north.
Okay.
We just jumped into it, but at this point, I'll close it to the public comment and discuss some with the board, and we likely will have questions. Anything else, Brett?
Yeah, just if approved, the following may be attached, and we've got the no things removed down by the shoreline. They're still going to have permission, though, to build a set of stairs down to the shoreline and put a dock in and do those normal things that people live on the lake for?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything concerning. I think it's a difficult lot that was left by the plat, and you're pinched in there pretty tight. And it seems like we're dealing more with the math of figuring the average of the slope than we are actually problematic conditions, is the sense that I get from this narrative. I wasn't able to make a site visit, and it'd be hard at this
Walk
time of the
around.
year to determine anything
Try.
too substantive, but yeah, I would be comfortable.
Well, in the
with this.
staff acknowledgement, it seems that this is you've got the slope, but this is the spot where
Right.
it kind of levels out more than anywhere else on there.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to that note, the DNR comment letter, I think, is a part of that discussion, is that I spoke with the DNR area hydrologist to explain this request to her, because this is a very unique request. We don't typically see these types of things. And when I explained to her the terrace that you kind of have in the slope face here, and that this is very closely meeting that 50-foot segment of the 18%, which wouldn't have qualified as a bluff, she provided then this memo that wasn't recommending denial, which, we don't often see from them. So,
usually do.
I think that kind of supported the thought that this is one of those cases of a variance. I've been telling people that when you're on site and looking at the landscape, it makes a lot more sense than maybe it looks like on paper. So, to the credit of Mr. Dwyer and the applicants, they're trying to use the landscape, I think, in a very logical fashion on site.
That's how I see it. I think obvious staff and the applicant have put a lot of effort into this, and I don't see any concerns that aren't addressed in the proposed conditions, and I would state that I would generally agree with staff's considerations for finding of facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, yesterday when I read through it, I came to the same conclusion.
I would move to approve the variance with the findings of fact and the conditions as written.
Should we go through the questions?
Sure. I mean, I'm comfortable, honestly, yeah. I think
I read through them earlier, so you can just.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was reading it.
representative.
If you guys are comfortable with it, I think acknowledging them and that we're comfortable with what Neva had stated.
Okay.
So we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's approved. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
This is our last meeting with Attorney Hicken.
That was pretty easy for my last
That was your last one.
revision
Thank you.
commission meeting.
I was gonna run over and ask that question.
Are you moving away or are you staying here?
I'm staying here. I'm going to be the new chief legal officer